Welcome to Stoic Courage. If you crave her attention, that's the first sign you've already lost your power. Because the moment her validation becomes your oxygen, you stop breathing on your own. You think she doesn't notice? She does. Every glance you steal, every word you overthink, every delay before you text, she feels it, and she loses interest, long before you even realize it. You see, women aren't drawn to men who seek attention. They're drawn to men who don't need the world to look at them to know who they are. A stoic man doesn't crave attention. He creates presence. He doesn't chase the mirror. He becomes the reflection others want to see. That's why this message isn't for boys playing games. It's for men ready to reclaim their silence, their gravity, their peace. Because the less you chase, the more she feels, and the less you prove, the more she wonders who you truly are. 1. The hidden addiction. Why needing her attention destroys your power. It doesn't start with a text, it starts with a thought. Did she see my story? Should I double text? Maybe if I like her post, she'll notice me again. And just like that, you're not living in reality. You're living in her digital shadow. This is addiction in its most subtle form, not to her body, not even to her presence, but to her attention. And here's the brutal truth. The man who needs her attention has already given away his value. Because attention-seeking is energy leaking. You leak power when your worth depends on her gaze. You leak presence when your mind is stuck in the future, imagining her next move. And you leak masculinity, the moment your emotions are tied to her responses. A stoic man knows, the one who controls his attention controls his reality. He doesn't refresh screens, he refines his mind. He doesn't chase signs, he strengthens his center. She texts, good. She doesn't? Still good, because his peace isn't negotiable. When you stop being addicted to her noticing you, you become the man she notices without trying. 2. The stoic frame, becoming the man she can't unsee. There's a difference between being silent and being grounded. Many stay quiet hoping to be missed, but silence without substance is just absence. It's not the silence that draws her in. It's what the silence holds. Stillness, clarity, discipline. A life so full that attention becomes irrelevant. Because true attraction is never loud. It's a quiet force, a presence that doesn't seek to be seen, but becomes unforgettable the moment it is. Not by charm, not by performance, but by a depth she can feel and never quite explain. The mind searches for patterns, but what it can't decode, it obsesses over. That's the power of stillness. It isn't about making her guess. It's about embodying a presence so centered that the world starts guessing who you really are. You don't need to chase, because your gravity does the pulling, and that gravity isn't built in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows, in how you speak to yourself when no one listens, in how you hold posture when no one looks, in the battles no one sees, but that shape everything they do feel. The man who can sit with silence, not as a tactic, but as a way of being, becomes unforgettable. Because when attention loses meaning, the self begins to shine. 3. The mistakes of men who beg to be noticed. The real reason attraction fades isn't because she lost interest. It's because she saw too much access, too many words, too little mystery. When attention becomes the goal, dignity becomes the price. And slowly, almost invisibly, the man dissolves. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because he gave away his edge in exchange for her gaze. What begins as sincerity often mutates into strategy. A kind word turns into flattery. A thoughtful message turns into emotional bait. What once came from stillness now comes from fear. But fear is loud. It speaks through double texts, nervous jokes, restless checking. It tries to fill every pause, every silence, and in doing so, kills the very gravity that once drew her in. Here's the Stoic truth. The moment a man needs to be seen, he becomes easy to look past, because mystery doesn't survive exposure, and respect doesn't survive availability. The greatest mistake is not being too kind, but being too eager, too quick to prove, too unwilling to wait. What is always accessible becomes invisible, and beneath all this effort, there's usually one unspoken question: am I enough? Not spoken aloud, but whispered in every emoji, every explanation, every moment of overthinking. And that question, when unaddressed, turns a man from a presence into a performer. But presence doesn't perform. It doesn't audition for approval. It doesn't collapse at the first sign of distance. Presence holds. It remains. It speaks less, but says more. And the irony? She remembers the silence more than the sentences. She replays the pauses, not the paragraphs. Because what she can't fully understand is what she can't fully let go of. That's what most men forget. She doesn't fall for the noise. She falls for the stillness that doesn't flinch, the grounded energy that doesn't try to prove, because it knows what is real never begs to be seen. 4. From attention-seeking to attention-holding, the shift that changes everything. Craving attention is not a strategy, it's a symptom of disconnection from self, from discipline, from purpose. And no man can be truly attractive while being deeply disconnected. You don't become magnetic by trying to be noticed. You become magnetic by becoming whole. A Stoic doesn't ask, "Do they see me?" He asks, "Am I acting in accordance with what I value?" Because attention is external, but alignment is eternal. Every time you seek her gaze, you abandon your own. You look outward instead of inward. And here's the paradox. The more you abandon yourself for her attention, the less of you there is for her to admire. It's not about hiding, it's about holding frame, holding energy, holding purpose in the middle of chaos. She doesn't want someone who disappears when ignored. She wants someone who remains unshaken because he was never performing in the first place. 5. She doesn't need to notice you. You need to return to yourself. Maybe she's pulling away. Maybe she's cold. Maybe she hasn't replied in hours. But that isn't the problem. The real question is, why does her silence shake you? Why does her delay define your day? Why does your heart skip when your phone doesn't ping? The answer isn't in her. It never was. It's in the part of you that forgot how to stand still, without applause, without feedback, without someone looking back at you. Stoicism teaches one thing. You are not owed anything from the world, not her texts, not her interests, not even her attention. What you are owed is the chance to become unshakable, to live by principles, not reactions, to create peace so deep, her silence becomes irrelevant. And this is where most fall. They abandon themselves for a moment of closeness. They trade power for a text. They move not because it's right, but because they're afraid of what stillness might reveal. But principle doesn't move like that. It doesn't shift when someone pulls away. It doesn't reach out just to fill the void. It doesn't beg for clarity from someone else. It acts because it aligns with who you've chosen to become. It's not about hiding, it's about holding frame, holding purpose, holding peace when chaos wants a reaction. That's the discipline, not to win her back, but to not lose yourself again. And the irony? That's when she reaches. That's when she notices. That's when she feels you most. Not because you chased, but because you stopped running from yourself. If you've watched until now, don't let it end in silence. Write one sentence in the comments, not for this channel, but for the version of you that almost forgot who he was. Let this be your marker, a reminder that something inside you still knows, still remembers, still wants to rise. Click like if you're done pretending. Subscribe if you're ready to be remembered. We're not building followers. We're building men who remember their center. This is stoic courage, and this is just the beginning.